Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well, and in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing another book from the Nancy Drew Diaries series. And this book is actually book 1 in the series, and it's actually interesting because this book is actually a part 1, and the second book in the series is part 2, so unlike all the other stories, at least to my knowledge, all the other stories are standalones. You know, they're each one separate adventure that Nancy has and, you know, one separate case that she has to solve. But book 1 and book 2 are different. So, yeah, book 1 is part 1 and book 2 is part 2. So you can't, like, really, I mean, you could, but if you listen to book 2 first, it would give some of the stuff that happens in book 1 away. So you'd have to listen to book 1 first and then book 2. But as from what I know, the other books aren't like that. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the review of Nancy Drew Diaries, Curse of the Arctic Star. Now, for anyone that doesn't like curses, do not worry, there is actually no curse in this book. In fact, that curse part just comes from one of the characters on the ship, who hears about, like, a few things that went on during their time on the ship, because someone is sabotaging it. And one of the characters who actually ended up being the culprit, or one of the culprits, said something about maybe the ship was cursed because they were acting like they were just some paranoid passenger. But they ended up being the one who was doing some of this stuff. So, yeah, that's where that came in. So, yeah, and they only mentioned that like a couple times, so, yeah. That's where the curse part comes in at, but there's no actual curse. But anyway, so Nancy, George, and Bess are going on this really nice cruise ship because one of the people that works on the ship actually knows Nancy, and a bunch of crazy stuff has been happening, and she knows that Nancy has solved mysteries before, which is actually interesting because I honestly thought that this book was going to be like the first case that Nancy ever solved, but apparently Nancy has solved several other cases before this book even took place. So, yeah, but I know that there are some books out there when Nancy, George, and Bess are younger, so I guess that's when she started, solving cases, you know, if you can consider those books canon. But anyway, so they're going on the ship to investigate what is going on, and they actually can't talk freely about the case because Bess's boyfriend Alan tagged along, and at first he was like really annoying, or well, maybe not really annoying, but kind of annoying, and it was kind of annoying to think that they had to keep sneaking off or ditching him in some way, you know, making him do something so they could talk. And I didn't originally really like the idea of them having to ditch him so they could talk about the case, but it kind of got old to a certain point. But after a while, once we get deeper into the book, actually didn't really mind Alan, but I'll get more into him later, because there is some stuff about Alan that is revealed at the end of the second book, so I'll be mentioning that once I review the second book. But anyway, not long after they board the ship, someone screams and they find a body, which ends up being a mannequin in the pool, and there was this drink mix in the pool which was supposed to make it look like blood. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit disturbing. It's a little disturbing. But it was just a mannequin and a fruit drink mix, so yeah, not too disturbing, but still that was pretty disturbing to make it look like there was an actual body in the pool and they were bleeding. Yeah, gross and creepy. Anyway, now I'm just gonna say right now, I don't really remember all the events of this book. Honestly, I feel like this book, and even the second book, but more so, I guess this one, has a lot going on. Or at least, like, a lot of characters are introduced in, like, the first chapter. And from what I've heard, introducing a lot of characters in the first chapter, isn't a good thing, but I think that this book actually does it pretty good. But I kind of feel like maybe they could have saved some characters for the second chapter, at least. And like I said, I feel personally like this story has a lot going on, and I feel like it was a bit busy, and I can't even remember really all the events of it. So if you read this or listened to an audiobook of it like I did, and I missed something that's important, please forgive me. But one event that I do remember is that Nancy's luggage gets lost, but once she gets it back, she finds a note inside, and I forget what the note said. Sorry, I honestly forget what it said, but it wasn't a very nice note. It was, I think a little threatening too, but anyway, so, oh my goodness, so much happens in this book, and yeah, I really feel like there was a lot going on in this book. Probably too much. And yeah, I do think that they did introduce too many characters at the very beginning. So yeah, since I don't remember it very well, this video is probably not going to be as long as my first book review, The Clue at Black Creek Farm, which was like 22 minutes. But I don't think this video is going to be that long because I don't remember all the events, because again, I feel like this book just has too much going on, but it's still good. But anyway, so Nancy is able to talk to her friends again here and there. They have to ditch Alan, and there's this one part where they have to go to the bathroom to talk, and I do know that there's this scene where they're at the pool and they're talking about the case, and Nancy does have a few suspects, and one of her suspects is this 8-year-old boy that doesn't want to be on the ship, and it's her idea of him being the culprit, like somehow actually being able to drag that mannequin and throwing it in the pool and putting the drink minks in the pool to make it look like blood. That was not even, I don't think, taken that seriously. Because I don't think George and Bess ever really considered this little boy to be the culprit. But it's actually weird because there's this one part where Nancy mentions that the incident with the pool was childish, and I'm like, really, Nancy? You call putting a mannequin in the pool, making it look like, an actual person is in the pool face down? I think they were face down. Yeah, if I remember, I think they said that the mannequin was face down. But anyway, yeah, there was a mannequin in the pool that was supposedly supposed to be a human, an actual living person, or once living person, and they were bleeding. I'm like, that's not childish, Nancy. That's creepy. I don't know why in the world she considered that to be childish. That is not childish. That's creepy. That is just creepy. And I'm like, how is an 8-year-old kid even able to drag a mannequin that's probably like the height of his mother in a pool and without no one noticing? How do you even get a mannequin that size anyway? Because it was just a regular store mannequin. So it's like, how could an 8-year-old boy even get something like that? And how would he even get the idea to do something like that? And I'm like, okay, if they somehow reveal that he is responsible for that, I'm like, man, I'm scared to know what that kid's been watching. But later on, Nancy starts thinking that that idea really is ridiculous. And I must say, it is. That was absolutely ridiculous. But Nancy also has another suspect, this girl named Wendy, who's a blogger, and she makes it very clear that her blog isn't doing very well, and she even says that she sold her car to go on this trip. And I don't know if she was kidding or if she literally had to sell her car to go on this trip so she could get a good story for her blog. And I'm like, man, she's really devoted to her blog. But again, I don't know if she was just kidding about having to sell her car. If she wasn't kidding, that's a little over the top. But anyway, she is completely devoted to her blog, and it's not doing very well, and she does have financial issues because, again, from what she said, she had to sell her car, which maybe that wasn't a joke. But when I first was listening to this on the audiobook, I'm like, I wonder if she was just joking, but I kind of doubt she was joking, unfortunately. So yeah, that gives her a motive for wanting to cause trouble so she could put it on her blog. But even though she did mention some things happening, or she did mention, I think she mentioned the mannequin in the pool. It's actually funny because everyone keeps referring to it as the body in the pool, and I don't think hardly anyone ever really refers to it as the mannequin in the pool, which is a lot less creepy. But yeah, anyway, this Wendy blogger lady is one of Nancy's suspects, and Nancy even suspects this guy Scott. I forget what his position is. Again, for one thing, there's just so much going on, and I'm probably going to remember some of this stuff later on once I'm done with this video. Oh my goodness. This book just has so much going on. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so Nancy eventually finds out that the culprits were these honeymooners, or supposedly honeymooners, which I'm not even sure if these two were even married, because I don't think the book even confirms if they were really married or not. I think it would have been interesting if they did, because the culprits, again, were posing as honeymooners, which apparently they were not, but I don't think the book does say if they were married, which it would have been interesting to know for sure if they at least were already married, or if they were just two people that, were signed to work together. But these two were actually employees of this rival cruise ship, and they were going to sabotage this ship so, they would, close up and that kind of thing. So those two get arrested, and they were actually responsible for the mannequin in the pool, and they were responsible for some other things like the air conditioning and the heat being off in some of the rooms, which actually they weren't the only culprit. Actually, one of the maids, I think her name was Iris, yeah, she was also working with them as well. So she was one of the crooks, and I'm just going to say there's a few different crooks in this book, or in this whole, story, if you also include book 2. So yeah, there's these two supposedly honeymooners and the maid. They're the first few crooks that we find out about. And it's actually weird because Nancy, if I'm not mistaken, she never suspected these two. And I'm like, you're suspecting an 8-year-old little boy, and even at some point she even suspects his parents to have caused the trouble, but yet she won't suspect honeymooners. I mean, if she's suspicious of an 8-year-old boy, why isn't she suspicious of 2 honeymooners? I mean, after listening to a few of these Nancy Drew books, I'm starting to notice that the culprit usually is someone you least expect and someone that Nancy doesn't even consider to be a suspect. Oh my goodness. And it's actually funny because I think I already mentioned this, but I actually suspected these 2 as being the culprits. And it's actually funny because there's this one part where they're going to get off the boat and go into town. But when the lady of this couple says that they're actually going to be staying behind, I immediately thought, uh-oh, are they going to cause trouble, or are they, doing this? But Nancy never really thinks that's suspicious. And I'm like, really? I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing that the reader can actually solve the case before the characters can. I'm like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I guess it's a good thing for the reader, but a bad thing for the characters, especially when it's Nancy, who's supposed to be a really good detective. And I'm like, I was suspicious of these 2, and Nancy I don't think ever was. And I'm like, okay, am I in the wrong? Should I go into the detective business? Just kidding, but yeah, so they ended up being the crooks, but there's a cliffhanger at the end of the book that there was a jewel thief. And I honestly thought that these 2 honeymooners probably had something to do with being the jewel thief, because I actually started listening to book 2 like a few minutes, or actually not even a few minutes, like a few seconds, I guess, of book 2. And when I was starting to get the feeling that it was connected to book 1, I'm like, I think I'll just listen to book 1 and then I'll get back to this. Which I'm so glad I did, because book 2 does give some of the stuff away in book 1. So I thought that the jewel thief was had a lot bigger, part in the story, which they don't. But so yeah, not all the loose ends have been tied up just yet. And you'll have to stay tuned for my review of book 2 to find out what else happens. So stay tuned for that.